I'm Danny Whitescorn, and this is Behind the Title, where leaders show up differently. Today, Emma Bain, Chief Operating Officer at TLC Worldwide, brings us a very important subject that I'm confident most will identify with, the fear of public speaking.
That has been probably the biggest challenge that I've faced in my career, because I wouldn't call it a fear, I would actually call it a phobia. There's something in me that, like, if all eyes are on me, I just get a very physical sensation. Sometimes I will literally stop. Like, I'll be at our leadership conference, big long table, presenting something really important. And sometimes I'll stop and I'll be like, I'm really nervous. And that immediately helps to dissipate it.
Emma talks to us about the steps she took as she grew in responsibility and seniority and overcame this, all whilst going through challenges around identity, fertility, and so much more. What a powerful episode with real honesty and openness from Emma. Emma, it's so lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining. Obviously, we have a personal connection.
Yeah, mutual friend.
A mutual friend outside of work. But if you could maybe just start with a bit of an introduction to just you and I guess why it was important for you to come on Behind the Title today.
Yeah, thank you for asking me to come on. It's really great to be here. I am the Chief Operating Officer of TLC Worldwide, which is a rewards platform solution that increases sales and drives engagement and loyalty for global brands. When you messaged me, it was quite out of the blue, but I think it was in response to a LinkedIn post that I'd done that was quite personal. And yeah, I was immediately like, absolutely yes. I think it's been like a big part of my journey to try and bring more authenticity into my professional life. And I think anything that shows people that there's a lot going on behind the title, behind the scenes, is a really good thing. And
you've been in your business for quite a while, right?
Yeah, 20 years.
A long time.
Just a little bit of time.
Did you join as a grad or?
Yeah, so I literally started at
Amazing.
22. It's a really unique experience. I know that. I'm so proud of it. It's given me so much. I think probably the most relevant thing for this conversation is how much I've changed in that time. You know, you don't often stay in one organization through your entire career. Yeah. And, when I think about who I was at 22 and who I am now, it's completely different. I've gone through so many life changes and stages, and I've had to evolve, along the way. So that's been quite a journey.
What's been the highlight?
I think just seeing something from what it was when I joined to what it's become, and helping to build the culture of TLC. And it's an amazing company. I don't know how much you know about it. But yeah, I think helping to build a culture that, people feel like they can really connect to, that's been a huge highlight. I think
you're global, right? Global by nature.
Yeah, 14
offices. Markets, okay.
Yeah.
And how many people in the business?
About 420 at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So lots of small offices around the world.
And dare I ask, has there been a low light?
Oh, God. Lots of low lights. I mean, it's been the biggest roller coaster of my life. We've, from the time I joined to now, there's been a huge amount of up and down and times where, we didn't know whether we were going to be able to continue. And, we've had to restructure and rebuild and, lots of stress and, lots of very difficult decision making. But I've been fortunate enough from quite early on to be part of the team that has helped to sort of navigate through some of those challenges, which has been amazing.
Is there any regret that you didn't have anything else? You didn't try anything else in your career? Obviously, you've had a successful career and the business has I guess grown and gone on to brilliant things. But do you have any regrets?
I think I did early on.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get to talk about, that part of my journey. Definitely not now. I think because with the benefit now of being able to look back, I can just see how much it's given me.
Of course.
And I'm just really grateful for it. And I think that, there's so many other things I could have done. And, whatever experience you have is the right one for you. And that definitely feels like the case for me.
We spoke quite a lot prior to you coming on about the moments across your career and your life where you had, I may not get this right, so correct me if I'm wrong, like, I guess a bit of a a pause moment around what your identity was, who you wanted to stand for, your values, what you represented.
Definitely.
Was there a moment in your life where on the outside, polished perfection, veneer, everything looks great, but on the inside, feeling less than, or perhaps, not particularly good about yourself, or even just struggling and crumbling, that comes to mind?
Well, I think the way that you just described that is kind of my brand, or has been, not in a good way. I think that I've always been someone that's had like a big backstage. I think you call it the backstage pass on the podcast. I've always had a big backstage that no one can access, and sometimes I can't even access it. So I would say there's like millions of examples where that has been the case. But I guess probably the most helpful is to talk about when I realized that that was not a good thing. Because when I first came into my career, I was 22-year-old, very ambitious. I didn't have any female role models within TLC at a senior level to sort of look up to. And for whatever reason, conditioning, upbringing, who knows, but I had an idea in my mind of what a sort of successful woman in business looked like.
Yeah.
And so I was there to replicate that. So I was very serious and, quite zipped up. I didn't show a lot of my personality. I worked really hard. And in my personal life, it was just a very different story. I lost a few family members in my early 20s within quite a short space of time. So there was some grief there. And I think that set me off onto a bit of a spiritual journey, or a journey of self-discovery. And, I was learning to meditate and going to silent retreats and going to festivals and, lots of workshops where I was learning about all different ways to sort of really connect with yourself, and lots of very transformational experiences. But that was all happening on my holidays or on the weekend. And then on a Monday morning, I'd like literally turn up at work and be this very serious, zipped up person. And I think it wasn't conscious at the time, but that had a really big impact on me because, I was two completely different people, and I didn't really feel like I could bring myself to work. I didn't feel like that was an option. And it got to the point where I think it just felt unsustainable. Like I just felt like I can't continue this way, even though I loved my job. And I was really enjoying the journey that I was on. I left. And I
left your current organization?
I left the current organization. I left TLC and I went traveling, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to have to do something else. I'm going to have to maybe go and be some sort of creative or work for a charity, or, I can't be this person that I had become in my personal life while still honoring the ambition that I had, in my professional life. And actually, it was while I was away, it dawned on me that my mindset around it had been completely wrong, and that, of course I can be myself, and that, perhaps there was a chance that being myself would actually make me a better professional, a better leader, more engaging, more able to connect with people. And so I came back and I started the process of trying to integrate myself. But I wouldn't say it was like instant, like I came back and, it was baby steps, and it's so much better now. Like I am myself at work, and I recognize that I am this sort of hippie and, have all these interests in my personal life, but equally I'm super ambitious. I love the business that I'm helping to build. And, both of those things are true about me, and I can be both of those things, but it's still a work in progress.
Would the two personalities ever cross paths? And would you ever be called out by people around you to say, this is not?
Yeah, well, in my personal life, people were just like, I can't get my head around the fact that you go to an office every day, and they didn't understand what I do. They still don't. They call me Chandler.
No one understands why.
So anyone who knows Friends will know what that means. I'm transponster. Nobody really understands what I do. And in my professional life, if I did ever say, that I went to this retreat or festival, they would just be like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah. So yeah, of course, like people on both sides of my life recognized that there was this like big stark difference. I just didn't see that it was possible for it to be any other way. But, I think whenever you ignore a really key part of yourself, there's going to be repercussions. And there were definitely repercussions for me where, it wasn't so conscious. It wasn't like I was sort of openly struggling with this separation, but it definitely had enough of an impact for me to walk away from a career that I loved.
Was there a point in time where you either physically stood in front of a mirror or, metaphorically found yourself saying, Emma, you need to decide what you want, or you need to decide who you are?
It sounds so cliched, but I was on a mountain in India.
That does sound cliched. Yeah.
And I had just done a silent retreat, and I was sitting there and I was thinking about my life and, what I wanted to come back and do. And as I said, I'd been thinking, I'm going to have to just find a whole new career for myself. And none of it felt right, because I loved what I was doing. It felt important, to be building something and, being part of TLC and the team around me that I absolutely loved, and a lot of who, people I still work with. And so the only answer was no, it's you've got to find a way to bring yourself. And I think vulnerability has never been like an easy thing for me to show. And it still isn't. It's like an active practice now that I have to, I'm here having this conversation because I know how important it is, but it's not like it comes naturally to me.
That element of vulnerability, like I wear my heart on my sleeve, I say it as it is. My other half, I happily say this, she probably won't listen to this episode, but the opposite, the polar opposite. In fact, we often find ourselves talking to each other where I'm like, just a little pat on the shoulder will do me. Like if you can, if you can't give me a hug type thing.
Right.
But then I think vulnerability.
Just touch me.
Yeah, I just need to feel wanted. But the vulnerability is so broad, and I think in the workplace there is a balance to be found there. I don't think it's about bearing your soul to everyone.
Yeah.
But my view is that. It's, do I have empathy for other people? Mm-hmm. Can I recognize and spot, when someone's in a tough place, if they're not able or they suddenly are unable to deliver on a piece of work, is there something going on if they traditionally have been able to cover it? Mm-hmm. Does that ring true for you? Is there another side of vulnerability that you think of?
Yeah, I think showing parts of yourself is so crucial for empathy. Yeah. And I think it's really difficult to have empathy and be able to really connect with the people that you're working with, particularly as a leader. If you want to try and understand where somebody's coming from, what their challenges are, if you're a closed book. And I think when I came back to TLC and had made the decision, the commitment to start showing up more as myself, I know I was then a much better leader, and everybody felt that, So I think it doesn't necessarily mean that you're sitting there saying, I feel like this today, or it could just literally just be talking about, who you really are outside of work and some of the things that are going on for you.
On a personal level, I'd love to understand just a second, like when you go on something like a personal, like when you go on a silent retreat, what does it teach you, and what has it taught you that you've been able to take forward into your life today?
I love silence, which obviously some people think about a silent retreat and they're like, that sounds like a nightmare. I'm like, that sounds like heaven, especially when you've got kids, sometimes, now I haven't done one since, for a long, long time now. And I have got young kids and, but the idea of it now is like, oh, that would be so nice. But on a deeper level, it forces you to confront the voices in your head, that you often just a background noise, you ignore it, and they're very loud, and you have to hear what they're saying. And eventually, if you do enough of time in silence, then that voice will start to quieten down, and then you get to real presence. And once you've accessed that, then you can never know that. It's not like now I can access it easily. I don't practice meditation enough anymore. But now I've had that experience, I know it's there to be accessed.
See, I don't like the word meditation. I have what I call quiet time. Mm-hmm. And I do it every morning for 10 minutes and I listen to a guided speaker on an app and I say a few things in my head, and it's exactly the same aspect. It helps to, I could have, that internal voice speaking me all day. I can have thoughts that are either intrusive or totally benign, weird, odd. And what I've learned is that, thoughts are like clouds in the sky, right? You can either sit there and you can let them sit over you, or you can just let them pass like one by one. So I identify with that. And why do I say that? Because I could drive in the car with my stepson, Harry and Kelly, and I could have no radio on and sit in silence. And that's delightful for me.
Yeah.
And they think I'm weird. Equally at the same time, if I've been working at home and suddenly everyone comes in and the TV's a bit too loud and I've got the dogs there and someone's cooking up, again, I really struggle with that stuff. So I love the silence.
You need it.
Yeah, I love the silence. In fact, when I go to meetings that I go to that help me stay sober, more often than not, if no one's speaking, I love it.
Yeah.
And then you get someone that speaks up and says, I couldn't bear the silence.
Yeah.
And I'm
everyone's so different in that way.
It's
I
mad.
love it as well.
It's mad. Was I guess is then, if we kind of pick up when you came back from finding yourself on a mountain in India.
I hate it.
It is cliche, but
It's
so it is what it is. Was there a moment where it could have been personally, professionally, in the workplace or at home, where there was shit that you wish you'd said? I often find that people in senior roles, they look back on their career and they're like, I probably could have done that differently. And I want to encourage people to know that it's okay to feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples. Again, I think one jumps out. So March 2020,
COVID.
Crisis is a word that gets associated with that time.
Yes.
I was 8 weeks pregnant with my second child, conceived via IVF. I'd had 2 back-to-back rounds of IVF, which was, very, very intense on my body. And I was full of hormones and I had very heavy sickness. So I was throwing up a couple of times a day, felt nauseous all the time. And my oldest was 3 and he was at home because he couldn't go to nursery. And all I could hear was, where's mummy, where's mummy, where's mummy? And like every leadership team, I think, on the planet at that time, we were on a Zoom call, me and my board team, trying to navigate this unknown thing, which was going to have an impact on the business in some way. We just didn't know how, and trying to make decisions on the fly with very little information, no data, that affected people's lives, the people that work for us, and how we were going to, survive this thing. And I remember one particularly difficult call, quite highly tense call, where we were trying to make some big decisions that we just had to make. Getting off the phone, going into my bathroom and just having a full-blown panic attack. And I have only had, I think, 2 in my life. So I'm not someone, luckily, who suffers with panic attacks. But I just remember being on the bathroom floor and just being like, I just can't do this. And I never said anything. And the thing is, I work with the most unbelievable board team in the world. And if I'd have said what I should have said, which is, guys, I will do everything I can, but I am seriously struggling here. I am being very sick. I just can't do this. They would have been like, switch off. We've got this. They would have completely had my back. But I just didn't feel I could do that. I felt this like weight of responsibility for the people that work for the company, and my place in that. I'm operations, and it was a massive crisis, which is, where I need to step up and step in. And it didn't feel possible for me to say it, but I should have absolutely said it. And even afterwards, I hadn't said it, so I never.
Is this the first time you're saying it out loud?
Yeah, actually, yeah. And I regret that, because it's just madness not to have accepted the reality that I was in at that point. You know, yes, of course, everybody was struggling in some way, you know, especially, you know, being a leader of a company and not knowing what to do when COVID set in. But with that, on top of 2 back-to-back rounds of IVF and my oldest at home and being extremely sick, you know, I should have said, guys, this is too much for me. And I didn't. And somehow managed to sort of navigate through that. But I think that's just another example, even though it was quite a lot later than when I came back to TLC and I'd made that commitment to be more authentic and show up. It was just another example where it's still a work in progress. That was only 5 years ago. And, you know, I still just hid all of that away because it felt like the only option at the time. And of course it wasn't.
It's mad. You know, everyone that's come on the podcast, and actually just people I speak to outside of this, and I don't know, maybe I feel quite, maybe that's why I've created this, because I don't, I remember actually, funny enough, COVID, I wasn't in a particularly good place. I hadn't been going to my meetings for a couple of years, not for any other reason than just life got good. You know, the gifts of my recovery came, and I just kind of, it was a backseat, right? And there was a moment where I wasn't happy. And I ended up taking sick leave for the first time ever in my career. And I thought to myself, not why don't more people do this, but why is it taking me so long? Maybe I didn't have a moment like that. Why is it taking me so long to be able to speak up? Because I was always quite honest at that point. I'd been, you know, honest for quite a few years. So I find it fascinating. Every senior leader I talk to says the same thing. I don't know why I didn't say anything. Yeah. And I can only sit there and make a wild assumption, which may be incorrect, and a generalization that people are worried that it's going to affect their standing. And it's going to affect, you know, whether they're able to do their job, whether they're going to get a pay rise, whether they're, you know, going to be looked upon as weak. And I actually think some of the strongest people are the ones that have been able to address head on some of those challenges and actually be able to demonstrate to people that that was a rocky road.
Yeah. So completely. I mean, for me, I wasn't worried that it would affect my standing. I can look back in hindsight and know that because I have such a, you know, well-established team around me that, you know, the board team that I work with, we've been together for a long time and we have nothing but respect for each other. And like I said, they would have supported me. But yeah, probably being seen to be weak, but it's an internalized conditioning that it's not come from anybody else, certainly not the people I work with. It's more about, you know, what's in me, you know, that's driving my, you know, inability to say at any point, I can't do this. It's like I am the strong one, you know, which is obviously not always a good thing. And like I said before, it's like an active practice now.
Do you find that there are triggers that you experience every day that might take you to that same place, or at least take you to a place but you can spot before you get to the rock bottom or the moment where it's tough? Are there things that regularly come up for you? I guess being a COO of a very successful global organization must be quite a lot.
I'd say not day-to-day triggers that sort of take me to a certain place. I think there are triggers that bring up feelings in me. I'd say the first one is imposter syndrome. You know, when I hear people talking about it or get asked a lot, have I got it? Did I have it? It's something that, I don't know, it brings up an uncomfortable feeling in me where, you know, I never really felt like I had it. But then sometimes I felt like if I didn't say I had it, it would make me sound like I've got an ego. So I feel like I don't know this for sure, but I think I probably said I had it a few times just because maybe that makes me sound a bit more modest. But I hear it a lot, and especially from women. And so a couple of years ago, I was like, what is this thing, you know, that so many people feel they have, and you almost expect it of certain people, especially women. And so I did some research, and it was actually coined in 1978 by two female psychologists. Obviously, in 1978, there were a lot of women that sort of were imposters in a lot of industries.
Yeah,
so that's quite telling in itself. But they studied women. So it was a study of women initially. And they studied women in professional settings. And they said they all had these common traits. And so they grouped them together and they said, it's imposter syndrome. And when you look at the traits, nervous, overwhelmed, out of your depth, feeling like you don't belong. I get nervous. I was nervous today. Like, I get nervous a lot. You know, it comes and goes. I'm not nervous right this second, but I was half an hour ago. Overwhelmed. I'm a working mum with 2 young kids. I get when am I not overwhelmed? Like, busy job, busy life. I get really overwhelmed. Feeling like I'm out of my depth. I've always felt like I'm out of my depth. I mean, who doesn't feel like they're out of their depth? Like, you know, I took on a lot of responsibility at a young age and I was definitely out of my depth. And, you know, sometimes I feel like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. And sometimes I'm like, God, I'm really out of my depth. So it's like, these are normal things that people feel. And actually what you're doing with these conversations is show that. So it triggers me because I'm like, well, everybody's feeling this stuff. So why do people then feel like they have to put this sort of label on themselves, which holds people back? You know, I've got imposter. I'm an imposter. It's like, no, you are having a normal human experience, and everybody else is too. They just don't talk about it so much. So if you're nervous, so now what I try and do is, you know, if I am feeling nervous at work, I'll just say the words, you did it just before. And I think it's great because it's like, yeah, it's so normal. So that sort of, maybe it's not a trigger, but it grinds my gears. Another one, and it sort of links to something you said before, but it's when people say that I'm scary or intimidating. Because when I came into my career, I was very aware that there's this like stereotype of women in business that can be really negative, you know, like the devil wears Prada, or, you know, there's lots of examples. I think popular culture hasn't particularly helped with this. No. And I was really like, I felt very strongly at the time of starting out that I never wanted to be seen that way. And so I've always like gone over and above to try and be kind and fair and nice and friendly. But the reality is, like, the more senior you get, it doesn't really matter what you do. People will always perceive you how they want to perceive you. And just your title alone, you know, can be quite an intimidating thing. But it really triggers something in me when people say that, because I've sometimes overcompensated, which isn't a good thing. And, you know, I definitely care too much about how people perceive me and that they think that I'm nice. And, you know, as long as I'm acting in the way that I feel is right, it shouldn't really matter, but it does. And I put some of my biggest mistakes in my career down to overcompensating on this and just trying so hard to, you know, not be seen as ruthless or bossy or mean. And I do think, obviously, women do get held to a slightly different standard with this stuff, and you know, are, true. You know, more quickly seen as, you know, intimidating or scary than maybe men. So when I'm told that, I'm like, no, why?
Yeah. Society has drastically changed in the last 10 years, and hearing from people like yourself and, you know, many of the others that have come and will come on the podcast, I hope helps to destigmatize or normalize some of these, I guess, taboo, difficult topics that exist in the workplace. I've never heard anyone unpack imposter syndrome like that.
Right.
Never heard anyone unpack it. In fact, I think I've said it countless times myself. And I agree. We as a society like to package things up to make them easy. Mm-hmm. And actually, when you break it down, you're like, well, that's just normal.
Yeah.
Anyone's going to feel like that.
Yeah.
You know, I think the same exists with ADHD. Mm-hmm. You know, and having done the tests for Al, my stepson. Yeah, he's on the spectrum. We don't label him as ADHD because we don't believe that is a beneficial thing for him at this age. Now, might that be something later on in life? Possibly. But I want him to discover that himself. I don't want to create the conditions that make him feel like he's a minority. And so I think about the next generation, like how do you feel? You know, obviously you talked about your kids, and I guess that's where I'm going, is the lessons that you teach them, and then how you bring that into the workplace. And forgive me for being direct, but like obviously fertility and IVF is probably an area in the workplace that isn't discussed, because why would you discuss it?
Yeah.
Maybe just for a second, just talk me through that experience of going through that journey, but then how then where we are as a society at the moment, how you then, you know, translate that into making sure your kids are set up to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really hard thing for anyone to go through in any capacity, whatever you're doing. It's all consuming. My journey was 7 years from sort of the start to the end, and I'm very fortunate to have had 2 successful pregnancies through that. But yeah, it's very much behind the scenes because you can't really talk about it. Even if you're the most authentic, heart on sleeve person, you can't go into work every day and say, I got my period today, or, you know, oh, I've just got injected. And, you know, because you don't want that expectation from people of, are you pregnant yet? You know,
that's a good
point. So you can't really communicate it until you're out the other side. So it's something that you have to navigate while you're still living your life, because you can't put your life on hold for 7 years, or however long it takes. Obviously, I had my oldest in that time, and, you know, had a maternity leave, and there was probably a little bit of a gap of not trying. But, you know, there's big chunks of your career where you're having to continue working, you know, and building your career and succeeding in that way, while every thought is consumed by what's going on in your body. And anyone who's been on a fertility journey will know how all-consuming that is. It's not something that you can just put down and, okay, at the end of the day, I'll think about it, because you're so hyper aware of everything that's happening, all your symptoms. And when you are in active treatment, you're injecting daily, and that's then having another knock-on effect on your energy levels or side effects, you know. So you are having to sort of deal with this big thing while you're still showing up every day as you always would. I think I was able to do that because I had all that previous training of, you know, being able to put on a veneer, and, you know, so I managed to do it. But yeah, it was not easy. And I think now bringing that back to my kids, I think just, you know, similar to what I was saying about imposter syndrome, I think teaching them that it's okay to feel whatever they're feeling, and that it's okay for them to talk about it. Like I was a really shy kid, like a really, really, really shy kid up until I was about 14, like painfully shy, I would say. And my oldest son is also shy, although he's 9 now, and I think he's showing a lot more confidence than I did at that age. But I have said to him, you know, from a young age, when I could see, you know, that there were the same kind of signs that I had of shyness and sort of a discomfort in social situations, that it's totally fine that you feel like that. But I think us 80s kids, it was very different. You know, there wasn't that understanding, and so many things, you know, and I have a huge amount of empathy for our generation's parents because they didn't have access to the kind of information that we have now. But I think just saying to him, it's absolutely fine that you feel this way. Like, it will pass. One day you won't feel that. One day you will. It's fine. It's normal. Lots of other people feel it. They might not show it. I think that might have helped him get confidence a bit sooner than I did. Everything I've learned about trying to be honest about where I'm at, and that all feelings are normal. You know, it doesn't make you one thing. It doesn't make you an imposter, or it doesn't mean you have imposter syndrome if you feel out of your depth.
When we first had a conversation, you talked about your fear of public speaking. And it got me to thinking just there, because I don't rehearse this stuff, as I've said to you. So I'm going with where my head takes me. How's that worked? You know, was there a moment that you had to stand yourself in front of a mirror and say, pull yourself together, Emma? You're about to talk to 450 people. You're about to walk into a boardroom, you know, of VCs or whatever it may be, where where you've had to really have a chat with yourself and just be like, come on, mate, just got to get over it now.
I mean, I don't think it came from me, but it did come from somebody. But that has been probably the biggest challenge that I've faced in my career, because I wouldn't call it a fear. I would actually call it a phobia. I think it comes from that shy kid, even though I'm not really shy anymore. You know, I feel quite confident generally. There's something in me that, like, if all eyes are on me, I just get a very physical sensation. Like, the nerves are very overwhelmingly physical. My heart beats really fast. I get a dry throat. And I've had to public speak throughout my career, and there's been so many times where it's just almost felt impossible. And it got to a point, I think I was probably in my early 30s, where the founder of TLC said, I'm going to get you a coach. I'm going to pay for somebody to have some time with you. This amazing woman called Lynn Blades, who's a coach. And we had some sessions together, and she made me do a presentation to her that I'd just done at a leadership conference. And because I'm so nervous and I have this phobia, I had to, like, script it. So I'd had the script, and the way that I would have delivered it in the conference is I would have stood up and read the script. She filmed me reading this script to her. And in my mind, it wasn't too bad because I was prepared and I said all the words properly. And then she played it back to me. And it was just so boring. And there was no personality. It was just like robot, blah, 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 like reading all the words. And it was just like a light bulb moment. You know, it was a very clever, like, way for me to see and, like, be confronted with what I had become as a public speaker. And I have a lot to say. It's not like I feel like I'm not able to articulate myself. It's just that the nerves just feel so overwhelming that I struggle to get my words out, particularly in the beginning. So I sort of have to write it all down. And so when she gave me that feedback, and we did then she gave me some tips and tricks on how to sort of calm the nerves when they come, it got better from then on. You know, that was 10 years ago. And I'd say now I still feel the nerves, but they pass a lot quicker. Yeah. And I now know that the answer isn't just like reading from a script. I have to prepare. So that's something I think maybe some people don't realize, that even, you know, really senior people have to do. Like some people don't. You know, our CEO, he's an absolute master of public speaking. He will just stand up in front of any size crowd and it will just come out beautifully. Like, I have to prepare. It's just the way that I'm built. But even with my preparation, I know that I have to bring in some personality, otherwise it just won't work. And sometimes I will literally stop. Like, I'll be at our leadership conference, big long table, presenting something really important, and sometimes I'll stop and I'll be like, I'm really nervous. And that immediately helps to dissipate it. So, like, I think before that coaching, I felt like it was something I really had to hide. Like, you can't be this senior person and have this phobia. Like, you know, absolutely no, like, shove it away. And now I own it and I tell everyone. Like, I literally talk about it all the time, particularly to some of the younger people at work, because I want them to know that if they feel that way, it's absolutely fine. You can still get through it. And it will get better. And, you know, it's been like a muscle I've had to train, because you do something so much. Yeah. It does get easier.
I think it takes the power out of it as well, when you're just honest about it with yourself and other people.
Yeah.
We were actually talking about it on one of the previous episodes with Lisa from WPP, and we talked about pitching, because we have to do a lot of it, and it feels like a live job interview.
Yeah.
Like you almost, certainly, the expectation, yes, we're there to tell a story to a client and demonstrate, you know, our point of view based on what they require. But you feel like you're in a live interview with your bosses. at every single time. And, you know, I was saying in particular, it took me a long time to understand why rehearsals matter.
Oh gosh, yeah. So important.
I'm also known for, okay, Danny doesn't like rehearsals because I don't like it, because I'm not a scripted person. And I tend to work a bit more fluidly because it's who I am, and I think it comes across more genuinely.
Yeah.
But I've now learned I have to write out my notes, and I write them out longhand, and then over the next few days, I write them out shorthand, and I've got 3 pages there, and I have my book next to me, and it's not even a big book. It's like a small little pocket-sized book, and I just take a little glance, you know, just before we're about to start, and I have a look at it. And, you know, the truth is someone told me, the thing is, Danny, is that the people that you're presenting to, they don't know what you're going to present. So they don't know whether you're supposed to say something or you're not supposed to say something.
Yeah.
So it's only yourself and the other people. And if you don't say it, you don't say it.
Yeah.
You know, yes, it will be frustrating for you, but I had, and I still have that same fear. You know, when we launched the podcast, I told you, we had a room of 30 people, and there were people that I cared about in my career, in the industry, in my family. I was so nervous. I was petrified. Like, it was like the smallest room, and I was genuinely shaking because I get emotional as well. And then I'm like, I don't want to cry.
It matters to you, right?
Yeah.
And I do, and like, people have said it to me so many times over the years where I've been like, I'm so nervous, and they're like, it's because you care. You know, and I do think that.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a lot of self-inflicted pain that, you know, when you feel like there's a perfectionism thing for me definitely there, which isn't helpful. But I also think it's because I really want it to be good. I want to be able to get the points I want to make across, and because I care about it.
Are there any specific techniques you use before you're either, or I guess in the run up to, or immediately before the moment? Do you G yourself up? Do you I don't know, have a shot of ginger? Like what? Like
breathing techniques.
Okay.
Yeah, I like box breathe. So 4 in, hold 4, 4 out, hold 4. You know, that definitely helps a bit. And also, I think just accepting that they're there. Yeah. Like all the physical stuff when I was younger, I used to fight against it so much, so hard. You know, I'd just be like, what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this like this? Like, it's going to be so bad. Like, And now I've got enough experience to know that it doesn't completely ruin it. Like, I can still deliver what I want to say with the nerves there, and they do dissipate once I've started and got going. So now when I feel it before, because it's always before is the worst nerves, I'm just like accepting of them. Like, I'm a bit kinder to myself, and that helps a lot. You know, if I'm just like, they're there, it's okay.
I always say there's 3 stories that I deliver when I'm working on a pitch or a big meeting. There's the one before, which is, you know, perfectly scripted, every single point that I need to land, every data point that needs to be kind of articulated. There's the story that I deliver in the room, which often is missing half the stuff in my head that I was supposed to say. And then there's a story after, which is like, I wish I said this, this, and this. And to me, I've learned more and more to forget about the after.
Yeah. And
if anything, I've learned more and more to forget about the beginning. Yes, I prep, but what comes out in the moment is what comes out in the moment. If I know what I'm talking about, the chances are is that it will come through. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I might have someone say, you know, they'll joke, you know, because they know that I deliver with passion, and I can't deliver with passion in like 20 seconds. Like, I need a minute.
Yeah,
I need a minute and a half for that passion. So it's a fascinating challenge as you grow more senior in your role to have to overcome. So let's kind of bring it to a bit of a close. We talk about the permission slip. We talk about, you know, giving people, I guess, permission to feel, think, or do something different in their role. You've had an amazing career, you know, both personally, I think kind of your journey of development, but also professionally in terms of where TLC are now. What advice would you give to people? What permission would you give to people to kind of think, feel, do, say that's different to what they do now?
Well, again, it sounds really cheesy, but I think it's got to be yourself. I think it took me a really long time to get to a point where I realized how important that was for my ability as a leader, to be engaging, to be able to connect with people. And I think, success, people talk about what is success. I think success is using, for me anyway, it's using the gifts that you've been given, whatever your real skill set is, to make a difference. And that doesn't necessarily need to be making a difference charitably. It could be building something that you really care about, or meeting KPIs that help a business to succeed, or that, supports your family, but it's using what is true to you to make a difference. And I just don't think you can really achieve your greatness, or, the level of success that, is your peak, unless you are true to who you are. And like I said, for me, that's still a work in progress, but I know it to be true. Like in my bones, I know that is true. So I would say be yourself. But I do think that the younger generation are coming in at a much higher starting point with this. Like, I look at some of the young people, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I look at some of the young people that I work with, and there is a level of sort of confidence really early on who they are, and like a bit of an uncompromising stance on like, this is how I'm going to show up and this is who I'm going to be. And I think it's so inspiring. I definitely don't feel like that was the vibe, when I was 22, coming into my career. But so I think the younger generation are probably going to continue, on that journey anyway. And hopefully that continues, and, for our children, it's even more so. So that's really exciting and encouraging to see. But yeah, it would have to just be, from all my experience, just really try and be true to you and be yourself.
Amazing. Emma, thank you so much for joining today. Amazing journey, amazing story. I look forward to everyone hearing this episode. And thank you once again for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.